an entity that is supposed to make money to support local governments with some wild spending on travel. Now, this is just the latest unflattering report about Western Region Off-Track Betting, or OTB. Investigative Post got receipts for travel for the past year for its departing president and CEO, Henry Wojtasek. He was recently replaced by former Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown. Well, these receipts show he spent a whopping $8 grand on a trip to Las Vegas earlier this fall, not only staying at the Palazzo Hotel, but upgrading his room, and it came out to more than $1,000 a night. He and 4 colleagues also enjoyed 2 expensive meals on the trip, one for $929, the other for nearly $1,600 for a dinner. The second most expensive trip he took was to Saratoga, New York for a conference in August that cost more than $4,300. His hotel averaged nearly $400 a night, and he expensed a dinner for himself and 8 others, costing nearly $2,500. J. Shoemaker reported out this story for Investigative Post, and he joins me now live. I want to start here with why this matters, and I always think of that when we cover these OTB stories, as we all have been for many years now. It's because OTB is supposed to make money that then goes back to a bunch of our counties and municipalities. So this stuff matters, right?
Yeah, so the big takeaway here is that the total spending that we're talking about here is around $16,000. Now, this is an entity that pulls in $90 million in revenue every year. So compared to that, $16,000 is not, comparably huge.
Sure.
However, the takeaway here is that this year specifically, OTB is cutting its payments to local governments by more than $2 million. Now, this is due to a lot of other soaring expenses. We're talking the hiring of Byron Brown, the hiring of his deputies, raises for Henry Wojtasek, his buyout package that is being questioned by lawmakers and possibly investigated by the Inspector General. All of those expenses are combining into a reality where local governments like Buffalo, Erie County, etc. are getting less money from this entity. At the same time that that's happening, the outgoing CEO, knowing that he was leaving at the end of the year, is going to Vegas, is going to Saratoga Springs, is going to New York City, and spending, like you just said, $2,400 on a steak dinner.
Yeah. What's interesting here, too, is that if you work for the state of New York, there are limits on how much you can spend on a hotel room, depending on what city you're going to, how much you can spend on meals. Those rules don't necessarily apply to a public benefit corporation like OTB. A lot of people would just call that a loophole.
Yeah, so that's, OTBs have, enjoyed that quote unquote loophole for a long time. They are not governed by the same laws that other public authorities in New York are. So if you look at the receipts, there are some examples where they kind of seem to be following the guidelines. The dinners are limited, lunches are limited, the hotels in a couple cases are more modest. However, at the same time, you've got other trips where they're kind of spending $1,200 on a hotel, $3,300 on a hotel, $1,500 on dinner. So they are, in some cases, following the guidelines, but in other cases saying, we don't have to.
Yeah. Finally, there is new leadership at OTB. Henry Wojtasek is on his way out. Byron Brown is now the president and CEO. I know you talked with one member of the board who has suggested maybe there should be some reform in all of this. Is that likely?
Well, it is possible. So the person that we're talking about here is Crystal Rodriguez-Dabney. She is a former deputy of Byron Brown when he was the mayor here. She is Buffalo's representative on this board. She is still very close with the former mayor. So when I contacted her for this story, she was very concerned and said, I immediately called the former mayor and I had a discussion with him, and we are talking about putting some new rules in place. If we're going to take her at her word for this, it seems like they might follow through on that the former mayor might be willing to institute some of those rules for him and his staff, and we'll see what they do in the new year.
$1,000 a night to stay at the Palazzo in Vegas. If you've been to Vegas, you can get hotels for quite a bit cheaper than that. Go to investigativepost.org. Ton of information on this. J. Dale, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it.